The emergency room doors burst open at 11:47 p.m., and Officer Marcus Dunfield strode through like he owned the place. His hand slammed down on the triage desk hard enough to rattle the keyboard. "I need patient records, now." Claire Whitaker didn't look up from her computer. She'd been a trauma nurse at Silverline Medical Center in Redwood City for 3 years, but she'd spent 7 before that in field hospitals where mortars landed closer than this man was standing. She finished typing her note, saved it, then met his eyes with the kind of calm that only comes from seeing actual chaos. "Do you have a warrant?" Dunfield's jaw tightened. He leaned in, lowering his voice to what he probably thought was menacing. "I don't need one. This is a police matter." Claire's expression didn't shift. "Then you'll need proper authorization. HIPAA doesn't pause for badges." Around them, the ER went quiet. 2 patients in the waiting area stopped scrolling their phones. A resident carrying charts slowed his walk. Even the hum of the vending machine seemed to drop an octave. Dunfield's eyes narrowed. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Before we go further, stick with me until the end of this story. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this has traveled. Hit like if you want to see how this plays out, because what happens next changes everything. Claire Whitaker had learned a long time ago that the loudest person in the room was rarely the most dangerous. The dangerous ones didn't need volume. They didn't need threats. They just acted. Officer Marcus Dunfield wasn't dangerous. He was loud. "Ma'am, I'm going to say this one more time." His voice carried across the ER now, performative, like he wanted an audience. "I'm here on official business. A suspect was treated here 2 hours ago. I need his records, and I need them now." Claire logged out of her terminal with deliberate slowness. "And I'm telling you that without a court order or subpoena, I can't release protected health information. If there's an emergency circumstance, you'll need to speak with our legal team and hospital administration." "I don't have time for bureaucracy." "Then you should have brought the paperwork." The waiting room was fully tuned in now. An elderly man with a cane leaned forward. A woman holding an ice pack to her wrist pulled out her phone, camera already angled toward the desk. Dunfield noticed. His face flushed. "Are you refusing to cooperate with law enforcement?" "I'm following federal law." "That's obstruction." "No," Claire said, voice steady as a metronome. "That's compliance." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. His hand drifted toward his belt, resting near his radio. A small gesture, meant to remind her who had power here. But Claire had been trained by people who carried actual firepower into war zones, and none of them ever needed to posture like this. She didn't move. "You really want to do this?" Dunfield asked, voice dropping into what he probably thought was intimidating. "I'm not doing anything," Claire replied. "You are." Behind her, Dr. Patel appeared in the hallway, chart in hand, watching. He'd worked with Claire long enough to know when she was holding a line. He didn't interrupt. Dunfield glanced at him, then back at Claire. "I can have you charged. You understand that, right?" "For what?" "Obstruction of justice." "You'd have to prove I obstructed something lawful first." His jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. "You think you're smart." "I think I know the rules." For a second she thought he might actually try to escalate physically. His weight shifted, his hand tensed. But then his radio crackled, some dispatcher calling another unit, and the moment broke. Dunfield straightened, pulling his shoulders back like he was resetting. "Fine. I'll go through channels, but when I come back, you're going to regret making this difficult." "I'm just doing my job." "So am I." "Then do it correctly." He stared at her for 3 long seconds, then turned and walked out, boots heavy on the tile. The automatic doors hissed shut behind him. The ER exhaled. Dr. Patel stepped up to the desk, eyebrows raised. "You okay?" Claire nodded. "Yeah." "That was tense." "He'll be back." "With a warrant?" "Maybe. Or just angrier." Patel glanced toward the doors. "You want me to file an incident report?" "Already done," Claire said, pulling up the hospital's internal system. "Logged it the second he raised his voice." "Smart." She didn't respond. She was already scanning the security camera feed, making sure the angle had caught the whole interaction. It had. Clear audio, clear visual, timestamp locked. Patel watched her work. "You've done this before." "Something like it." Military? She nodded once. Medic? Iraq? Afghanistan? Field hospitals don't have HR departments, but they've got plenty of people who think rank means they can ignore protocol. What happened to them? Claire closed the feed, turned back to her patient queue. They learned. 40 minutes later, the night shift supervisor, Angela Torres, appeared at the nurses' station. She was a compact woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and the kind of efficiency that came from running ERs in 3 different states. "Heard you had a visitor," Angela said, leaning against the counter. "Cop wanted records," Claire replied without looking up from her medication cart. "No warrant, no emergency exception. I told him no." "He threatened you?" "Tried to." Angela's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Did it work?" "What do you think?" "I think I've seen you handle a full trauma bay during a multi-car pileup without breaking a sweat. A guy with a badge isn't going to rattle you." Claire finally looked up. "He's going to come back." "Probably. And he's going to be worse." Angela crossed her arms. "You want backup?" "I want documentation," Claire said. "Everything logged, cameras checked, legal notified. Already called them. They're reviewing the footage now." "Good." Angela tilted her head, studying her. "You're not worried." "Should I be?" "Most people would be." Claire shrugged. "Most people haven't dealt with officers who think authority means immunity." "You have?" "Overseas, yeah. Stateside, less so, but the pattern's the same." Angela nodded slowly. "You think this guy's dirty. I think he's used to people folding." "And you didn't?" "No." "So now he's embarrassed." "Probably." Angela pushed off the counter. "Watch your back. Embarrassed cops can be worse than angry ones." "I know." But Angela had already moved on, heading toward the trauma bay where a new patient was being wheeled in. Claire returned to her cart, double-checking the morphine dosage for a post-op patient in bed 4. Her hands were steady. They always were. The call came at 2:14 a.m. Claire was in the supply room restocking IV kits when her phone buzzed. Restricted number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "This is Claire." "Miss Whitaker?" A woman's voice, professional but strained. "This is Captain Renee Vasquez from the Redwood City Police Department's Internal Affairs Division. Do you have a moment?" Claire set down the box she was holding. "I do. I'm calling regarding an incident earlier tonight involving Officer Marcus Dunfield. I understand he requested patient information from you without proper authorization." "That's correct." "Can you walk me through what happened?" Claire did. Calmly, precisely. Every detail, every word exchanged, every threat implied. She didn't editorialize, didn't add emotion, just facts. When she finished, there was a pause on the line. "You remained composed throughout the interaction," Vasquez said. "I did. That's unusual. Most people escalate when confronted by law enforcement. I've been trained not to." "Military?" "Yes." Another pause. "Miss Whitaker, I need to ask, did Officer Dunfield make any physical contact with you?" "No." "Did he touch his weapon or imply he would use force?" "He rested his hand near his radio. Could have been unconscious. Could have been deliberate. But he didn't draw or brandish." "No." "Good. That limits the scope of what we're dealing with." Vasquez's tone shifted, just slightly. "I'm going to be honest with you. This isn't the first complaint about Officer Dunfield." Claire said nothing. "There's a pattern," Vasquez continued. "Mostly low-level, intimidation, overreach. People usually drop it because filing a formal complaint against an officer is complicated. You're saying he's done this before. I'm saying we've heard his name before." Claire felt something tighten in her chest. Not fear, not anger, just focus. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Your statement, the footage, and your willingness to go on record if this escalates. I'll do all 3. Even if it means dealing with pushback?" "I've dealt with worse." Vasquez let out a breath, something close to relief. "Okay, I'll have someone come by tomorrow to collect your formal statement. In the meantime, if Officer Dunfield contacts you again, at all, you call me immediately." "Understood." "And Miss Whitaker?" "Yes?" "Thank you. Most people don't stand their ground." Claire hung up and stood in the supply room for a moment, staring at the shelves of gauze and saline. Then she picked up the box and went back to work. Dunfield didn't come back that night, but the next evening, just after shift change, he reappeared. This time, he wasn't alone. 2 other officers flanked him as he walked through the ER doors at 6:52 p.m. Claire was at the desk again, handing off notes to the incoming night nurse, a younger woman named Stephanie, who looked up and immediately froze. "That him?" Stephanie whispered. Claire nodded. "Don't engage. Let me handle it." Dunfield walked straight to the desk, same aggressive posture, but his eyes were different now, sharper, angrier. "Miss Whitaker," he said, voice tight. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About the complaint you filed." Claire's expression didn't change. "I logged an incident report with my supervisor. Standard procedure." "You called internal affairs." "They called me." One of the officers with him, a younger guy with a buzz cut, stepped forward. "You're causing problems, ma'am." Claire looked at him. "I followed hospital policy and federal law. If that's a problem, take it up with the legal system." Dunfield leaned on the desk. "You don't know what you just started." "I didn't start anything. You embarrassed me in front of witnesses." "You embarrassed yourself." The buzz-cut officer's hand moved toward his belt. Claire clocked it immediately. So did Dr. Patel, who had just stepped into the hallway behind them. "Gentlemen," Patel said, voice calm but firm, "if you're here for medical treatment, we're happy to help. If not, you need to leave." Dunfield ignored him, eyes locked on Claire. "This isn't over." "It is for tonight," Patel said. "Security's already been notified." As if on cue, 2 hospital security guards appeared at the end of the hallway. Not aggressive, just present. Dunfield straightened. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Then he turned and walked out, the other 2 officers following. The doors slid shut. Stephanie exhaled shakily. "Oh my God." Claire turned back to her charts. "Log it." "What?" "Time, date, who was here, what was said. Document everything." Patel stepped up to the desk. "Claire, I'm fine. That was a threat. I know. You need to report it." "I will." But even as she said it, Claire felt the situation shifting. This wasn't just one officer with a bruised ego anymore. This was retaliation forming in real time, and she'd seen enough of it to know how it played out. She pulled out her phone and texted Captain Vasquez. "Second contact tonight. 3 officers. Explicit threat. Witnesses present. Footage available." The reply came in less than a minute. "Noted. Stay safe. We're moving faster now." Claire pocketed her phone and returned to her work, but the air in the ER felt heavier than before. The call came at 4:37 a.m. Claire was in the middle of redressing a wound when her phone buzzed again. She ignored it until the patient was stable, then stepped into the hallway. Another restricted number. "This is Claire." "Miss Whitaker, it's Captain Vasquez. I need you to listen carefully." The tone made Claire's pulse tick up just slightly. "I'm listening." "Officer Dunfield is under formal investigation as of tonight. We've escalated this to the DA's office based on your complaint and 3 others that came forward after yours." Claire's grip tightened on the phone. 3 others? 2 hospital staff from other facilities, 1 civilian, all similar incidents, all involving intimidation and unlawful demands for information. Claire closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. "So it wasn't just me." "No. You were just the first one who didn't back down." Vasquez paused. "There's something else." "What?" "Dunfield's been placed on administrative leave. He's not allowed near Silverline Medical Center or any hospital facility pending investigation." "Good. But I need to warn you, he's not taking it well. We've had reports of him making statements about you specifically." "What kind of statements?" "Nothing actionable yet, but he's angry, and he blames you for the investigation." Claire leaned against the wall, staring at the scuffed tile floor. "So what do I do?" "You keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Document everything. Don't engage. And if he contacts you directly, at all, you call me immediately. Okay?" "I mean it, Miss Whitaker. No heroics, no confrontations." Claire almost smiled. "I'm a nurse, Captain, not a soldier anymore." "You sure about that?" The line went quiet for a moment. Then Claire said, "Yeah, I'm sure. But even as she hung up, she wasn't entirely certain that was true. 3 days later, the shift supervisor pulled Claire into her office. Angela Torres looked tired, more tired than usual. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Claire sat. Angela rubbed her face, then looked up. "Legal called. They want to talk to you about the Dunfield situation." "What about it?" "They're building a case. Civil and criminal. They want your testimony." "I already gave my statement." "They want more, full deposition, on the record." Claire nodded. "Okay." Angela studied her. "You understand what that means, right? This goes public, your name gets attached. He'll know exactly who buried him." "He already knows." "Yeah, but this makes it official." Claire met her eyes. "Good." Angela leaned back in her chair, exhaling. "You're not scared." "Should I be?" "Most people would be." "I've been through worse. In a war zone. This is different." "Not really," Claire said quietly. "Fear works the same everywhere. You either let it control you or you don't." Angela was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, folding her hands on the desk. "You know, when you first started here, I thought you were too quiet, too reserved. I worried you wouldn't last. And now? Now I'm glad you're exactly who you are." Claire didn't respond. Angela slid a folder across the desk. "That's the deposition request. Legal needs your answer by tomorrow." Claire picked it up, scanned the first page. "I'll do it." "You sure?" "Yeah." Angela nodded. "Then go. Get some rest. You've earned it." But as Claire left the office and headed toward the parking lot, she knew rest wasn't coming anytime soon. The garage was nearly empty when she reached her car. She clicked the unlock button, the lights flashing once in the dim concrete space. She opened the door, tossed her bag onto the passenger seat, and was about to slide in when she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, deliberate. She turned. Officer Marcus Dunfield stood 15 feet away, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. They stared at each other in the fluorescent hum of the garage. Claire's pulse didn't spike. Her breathing didn't change. She just stood there, car door open, calculating. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Dunfield took a step closer. "We need to talk." "No, we don't." "You ruined my career." "You did that yourself." Another step. "I had a clean record before you." "Then you shouldn't have broken protocol." He stopped, 5 feet away now, close enough that she could see the bags under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "You don't know what you've done," he said quietly. Claire's voice was steady. "I know exactly what I've done. I have a family. So do the people you intimidated." His hands came out of his pockets, not threatening, just open, empty. "I'm asking you," he said, voice cracking just slightly. "Drop it. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't. Please." Claire looked at him for a long moment. She saw the desperation there, the fear, the realization that everything was crumbling, and she felt nothing. "You had a choice," she said. "Every single time you walked into a hospital and demanded something you weren't entitled to, you had a choice. You chose wrong. I was just doing my job. No, you were abusing your authority." Dunfield's face twisted. "You self-righteous." He didn't finish. Because headlights swept across the garage and a security patrol car rolled up, stopping 10 feet away. The guard stepped out, hand on his radio. "Everything okay here?" Claire didn't look away from Dunfield. Officer Dunfield was just leaving. The guard's eyes narrowed. "Sir, you need to exit the premises. Now." Dunfield stared at Claire for 3 more seconds. Then he turned and walked away. The guard waited until he was gone, then looked at Claire. "You want me to file a report?" "Yeah," Claire said, "and call Captain Vasquez at RCPD Internal Affairs. Tell her he violated the restraining order." The guard nodded and pulled out his phone. Claire got in her car, closed the door, and sat in the silence. Her hands were still steady, but something in her chest felt heavier now. She started the engine and drove home through empty streets, the city lights blurring past her windows. When she got to her apartment, she didn't turn on the lights, just sat on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vasquez. Warrant issued for Dunfield's arrest. Violation of admin leave restrictions. He's done. Claire read it twice. Then she set the phone down and closed her eyes. She'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. It just felt like the end of something that should never have started. Somewhere across the city, Marcus Dunfield's life was unraveling in real time. Suspension, investigation, arrest. The whole system he'd thought would protect him was now crushing him under its weight. And Claire Whitaker, the quiet ER nurse who'd refused to fold, was the reason why. She sat in the dark for another hour. Then she got up, took a shower, and went to bed. Tomorrow, she'd be back at Silverline Medical Center, back at the desk, back to saving lives. Because that's what she did. And no badge, no threat, no fear was ever going to stop her. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., and Claire's hand shot out to silence it before the second beep. She hadn't really slept, just laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the garage confrontation in her head. The look on Dunfield's face, the desperation, the way his voice had cracked when he said please. She pushed the thought away and got up. Shower, coffee, scrubs. The routine was automatic, muscle memory from years of early shifts. By 6:15, she was in her car, merging onto the highway as the sun bled orange across the horizon. Traffic was light. The radio played something bland and forgettable. She turned it off. Silence felt better. When she pulled into the hospital parking garage at 6:42, she half expected to see Dunfield's car lurking somewhere in the shadows. But the lot was empty except for the usual early shift vehicles. She parked, grabbed her bag, and headed inside. The ER was already buzzing. A trauma case had come in 20 minutes earlier. Motorcycle accident, multiple fractures, possible internal bleeding. Claire clocked in, tied her hair back, and stepped into the controlled chaos like she'd never left. Dr. Patel glanced up from the patient's chest X-ray. "You're here early." "Couldn't sleep." "Yeah, I heard about last night." Claire pulled on gloves, checked the IV line. "It's handled. Guy's got a warrant out now." "I know." Patel studied her for a second, then turned back to the imaging. "You okay?" "I'm fine." He didn't push. That was one thing she appreciated about Patel. He knew when to let things sit. The patient, a guy in his mid-20s with road rash covering half his torso, groaned as Claire adjusted the monitor leads. "Am I going to die?" "Not today," she said, voice steady. "But you're going to wish you wore a helmet." He tried to laugh, winced instead. "Noted." She worked quickly, efficiently, the way she always did. Vitals stable, bleeding controlled, pain managed. By 7:30, the guy was prepped for surgery, and Claire moved on to the next case. An elderly woman with chest pain, a kid with a broken wrist, a construction worker who'd driven a nail through his hand and refused to admit it, hurt. The hours blurred together. At 10:15, Angela Torres appeared at the nurse's station, looking like she'd just come from a meeting she didn't enjoy. "Conference room, now." Claire looked up. "What's going on?" "Legal's here, and someone from the DA's office." Claire's stomach tightened just slightly. "They didn't schedule this." "No. They showed up 20 minutes ago asking for you." Claire stripped off her gloves, washed her hands, and followed Angela down the hallway. The conference room was on the second floor, a windowless box with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. Two people were already seated. The first was a woman in her 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She stood and extended a hand. "Miss Whitaker, I'm Deputy District Attorney Rachel Klein." Claire shook it. "I wasn't expecting you." "I know. We're moving faster than anticipated." Klein gestured to the man beside her, mid-50s, graying at the temples, with the kind of face that had seen too many courtrooms. "This is Investigator Tom Brennan. He's been handling the Dunfield case." Brennan nodded. "Appreciate you meeting with us." Angela hovered near the door. "You want me to stay?" Klein glanced at Claire. "Your call." "I'm fine," Claire said. Angela hesitated, then left, closing the door behind her. Klein sat, folding her hands on the table. "We'll make this quick. Officer Dunfield was arrested early this morning for violating the administrative leave order. He's being held pending arraignment." Claire nodded. "I heard. What you might not have heard is that 3 additional complaints were filed against him in the last 72 hours. 2 from hospital staff at other facilities, 1 from a private citizen. all involving similar conduct, intimidation, unlawful demands for information, threats. Brennan leaned forward. We believe this is a pattern that's been going on for at least 2 years, maybe longer. Claire kept her expression neutral. Why didn't anyone report it before? Fear, Klein said simply. He's a cop. People assume he's protected. They assume nothing will happen, so they don't say anything. Until now. Until you. The room went quiet for a moment. Klein pulled a folder from her briefcase, slid it across the table. This is a formal request for your testimony in the criminal case against Marcus Dunfield. Charges include intimidation, abuse of authority, violation of federal privacy laws, and stalking. Claire opened the folder, scanned the first page. Stalking? The garage incident, Brennan said. He violated a direct order to stay away from you in the hospital. That elevates it. Claire closed the folder. What do you need from me? Full deposition, on the record, possibly trial testimony if it goes that far. And if I say no, Klein's gaze didn't waver. Then he walks. The other complaints are strong, but yours is the cornerstone. You documented everything. You stayed calm. You didn't escalate. A jury will believe you. And if they don't, then we lose, and he gets his badge back. Claire looked down at the folder, then back up at Klein. When do you need my answer? Today. That's fast. We don't have the luxury of time. Dunfield's union is already circling. They're going to argue this is retaliation, that he was just doing his job, that you're making it personal. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. It's not personal. I know, but that's what they'll say. Brennan spoke up. Look, I've been doing this for 23 years. I've seen cops like Dunfield before. They start small, little abuses, minor intimidation, then it escalates. Eventually, someone gets hurt. Maybe physically, maybe worse. He paused. You stopped that from happening. Claire's jaw tightened. I didn't stop anything. I just said no. That's more than most people do. She stared at the folder for a long moment. Then she looked up. I'll testify. Klein exhaled, something close to relief crossing her face. Thank you. But I want something in return. Klein's eyebrows lifted. What? Protection for the other complainants. If this goes public, they're going to get targeted. I want assurances that they're safe. We can arrange that. And I want this over fast. I don't want it dragging out for months. Brennan nodded. We're aiming for arraignment next week. Preliminary hearing within 30 days. If he takes a plea, it's done. If not, trial within 60. Claire picked up the folder. Then let's get started. The deposition took 4 hours. They set up in a secure room on the 3rd floor, just Klein, Brennan, a court reporter, and Claire. No interruptions, no distractions, just questions and answers, recorded and transcribed in real time. Klein walked her through every detail. The first encounter, the second, the garage. Every word Dunfield had said, every gesture, every implied threat. Claire answered each question the same way she'd handled the original incident. Calm, precise, factual. No emotion, no editorializing, just what happened. By the time they finished, it was almost 3 p.m. Claire's throat was dry, her shoulders tight from sitting too long. The court reporter packed up her equipment, nodded politely, and left. Klein leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. You're a good witness. I just told the truth. Most people can't do that without getting emotional. You stayed steady the whole time. Claire shrugged. I've had practice. Brennan closed his notebook. One more thing. We're expecting Dunfield's attorney to file a motion to dismiss. Standard procedure. They'll argue lack of evidence, procedural errors, whatever sticks. Don't be surprised if you hear your name in the media. Claire's stomach turned. How public is this going to get? Depends. If it stays in preliminary hearings, probably minimal. If it goes to trial, it's going to be news. Great. Klein stood, gathering her files. You did the right thing. I know that doesn't make it easier, but it's true. Claire didn't respond. After they left, she sat alone in the conference room for a few minutes, staring at the blank wall. Then she got up and went back to work. The first news story broke that night. Claire was at home, reheating leftovers, when her phone started buzzing. Text after text, calls from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored them until one came through from Dr. Patel. Turn on the news. She grabbed the remote, flipped to the local station. A reporter stood outside the Redwood City Police Department, microphone in hand, looking grave. Breaking tonight, Officer Marcus Dunfield, a 7-year veteran of the RCPD, has been arrested on multiple charges, including intimidation, abuse of authority, and stalking. Sources say the charges stem from incidents at local hospitals, where Dunfield allegedly demanded patient records without proper authorization. The screen cut to a photo of Dunfield in uniform, smiling, clean cut. Then it cut to Silverline Medical Center. Claire's breath caught. The investigation reportedly began after a complaint was filed by a hospital employee. While the name of that employee has not been released, sources close to the case say the individual is a nurse with prior military experience. Her phone buzzed again. Angela this time. "You okay?" Claire set the remote down, typed back, "Yeah," but she wasn't. The story ran for another 3 minutes, detailing the charges, the ongoing investigation, the potential penalties. Then it cycled to sports, weather, and Claire turned the TV off. She sat in the silence, hands clasped in her lap. Her name wasn't out there yet, but it would be. And when it was, everything would change. Well, the next morning, the hospital parking lot had news vans. Claire saw them as soon as she turned the corner. 3 vehicles, cameras set up, reporters milling around near the entrance. She pulled into the employee garage, parked in the back, and took the side entrance. Inside, the ER felt different. People were quieter. Nurses exchanged glances. Even the patients seemed subdued. Angela intercepted her before she reached the nurses' station. "Media's been calling all morning. What are you telling them?" "No comment, but they're persistent." Claire pulled on her ID badge, clipped it to her scrubs. "I'm not talking to them." "Good." Legal said the same thing. Dr. Patel appeared, looking tired. "You see the vans?" "Hard to miss." "They tried to interview me, asked if I knew the nurse who filed the complaint." Claire's jaw tightened. "What'd you say?" "That I'm a doctor, not a publicist." Despite everything, Claire almost smiled. The shift started and she threw herself into it. Patients, charts, medications, procedures. She kept her head down, stayed focused, didn't engage with the whispers that followed her through the hallways. But at 11:30, a man in a cheap suit walked into the ER and approached the desk. "I'm looking for Claire Whitaker." Stephanie, the younger nurse, froze. "Who's asking?" He pulled out a card. "David Rossi. I'm a reporter with the Redwood City Tribune. I'd like to ask her a few questions." Claire stepped out from the supply room, arms crossed. "I'm not giving interviews." Rossi turned, eyes lighting up. "Miss Whitaker, just a few questions. The public has a right to know. The public has access to the court case. That's all they need. But you're the one who started this. I filed a report. That's it." "You brought down a cop." Claire stepped closer, voice dropping. "I didn't bring down anyone. He did that himself." Rossi pulled out a notepad. "So you're saying Officer Dunfield is guilty?" "I'm saying you need to leave. The people deserve to know who's holding law enforcement accountable." Claire's patience snapped. "Security." 2 guards appeared within seconds. Rossi held up his hands. "I'm just doing my job." "So am I. Get out." He left, still scribbling notes. Angela appeared at Claire's side. "That's going to be in tomorrow's paper." "Let it." But as the day wore on, Claire felt the weight of it pressing down. The stares, the whispers, the way people looked at her like she was either a hero or a target, depending on who was watching. By the time her shift ended at 7 p.m., she was exhausted. She changed out of her scrubs, grabbed her bag, and headed for the garage. The news vans were gone, but the air still felt charged. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Then breathing. "Who is this?" A voice low and distorted. "You should have kept your mouth shut." Claire's pulse kicked up. "Who is this?" The line went dead. She stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, scanning the garage. Empty, quiet, just her and the hum of fluorescent lights. She got in her car, locked the doors, and drove home faster than usual. Once inside her apartment, she bolted the door, checked the windows, and sat on the couch with her phone in her hand. The call had come from a blocked number, untraceable. She thought about calling Vasquez, thought about filing another report. But what would she say? Someone breathed at me? She set the phone down and tried to steady her breathing. It was probably nothing, just some idiot trying to scare her. But it worked. The next 3 days were a blur. More news stories, more reporters, more calls from blocked numbers. Silent, breathing, then disconnecting. Claire stopped answering, started letting everything go to voicemail. At work, she kept her head down. Patients didn't care about the news. They just needed someone to stop the bleeding, manage the pain, keep them alive. That she could do. But the tension followed her everywhere. On the 4th day, Captain Vasquez called. "We've traced the calls," she said without preamble. Claire gripped the phone tighter. "And?" "Burner phones. Different numbers each time. Whoever's doing this knows how to stay off the grid. So you can't stop them." "Not yet. But we're monitoring. If they escalate, we'll have grounds to act." "And if they don't?" Vasquez hesitated. "Then you stay vigilant. Keep your doors locked. Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it." Claire exhaled slowly. "This is getting out of hand." "I know. But Dunfield's arraignment is in 2 days. Once that's done, the heat should die down." "You sure about that?" "No," Vasquez admitted. "But it's what we've got." The call ended, and Claire sat in her apartment, staring at nothing. She'd done the right thing. She knew that. But the cost was higher than she'd expected. The arraignment was set for Thursday at 9 a.m. Claire wasn't required to be there, but Klein had asked if she wanted to attend. She'd said yes. She drove to the courthouse alone, parked in the public lot, and walked through the front entrance with her head up and her shoulders back. Inside, the hallways were crowded. Lawyers, defendants, families. The air smelled like floor cleaner and stress. Klein met her near the courtroom doors. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be." "Dunfield's attorney is going to argue for bail reduction. We're pushing to keep it high." "Will he get out?" "Maybe. Depends on the judge." They entered the courtroom, took seats in the gallery. Claire sat in the back, hands folded in her lap, watching as the room filled. And then Dunfield was brought in. He looked smaller than she remembered, thinner. His uniform was gone, replaced by civilian clothes, khakis and a button-down that didn't quite fit. His hands were cuffed in front of him. He scanned the room, and his eyes landed on her. For 3 seconds, they stared at each other. Then he looked away. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Dunfield's attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, argued that her client was a dedicated officer with no prior record, that the charges were overblown, that he posed no flight risk. Klein countered with the stalking incident, the restraining order violation, the pattern of behavior. The judge listened, expressionless. Then he spoke. "Bail is set at $50,000. Defendant is prohibited from contacting the complainants or entering any hospital facility. Preliminary hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from today." The gavel came down. Dunfield's shoulders slumped. Claire stood and walked out before he could look at her again. Outside, Klein caught up with her on the courthouse steps. "That went well?" "He's going to post bail." "Probably." "And then what?" "Then he waits for trial, and so do we." Claire looked out at the street, at the people moving past, oblivious to everything that had just happened inside. "You okay?" Klein asked. Claire didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I will be." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure it was true. Quote. That night, the calls started again. The first one came at 10:47 p.m. Silent. Breathing. Disconnect. The second at 11:23. The third at 12:01. Claire stopped answering after the second one. Just let them ring, over and over, until she finally turned her phone off and tried to sleep. But sleep didn't come. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of the building. At 2:30 a.m., she got up, made coffee, and sat by the window. The street below was empty, quiet. But she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. The next morning, she walked into the ER and found Angela waiting at the nurse's station, face tight. "We need to talk." Claire set her bag down. "What happened?" Angela pulled her into the supply room, closed the door. "Someone called the hospital last night, asked for you by name, said they knew where you lived." Claire's blood went cold. "Did they say anything else?" "No, just that." Then they hung up. "Did you trace it?" Tried. Block number. Claire leaned against the shelf, pressing her palms against her temples. This is escalating. I know. I've already notified security and legal. They're reviewing protocols. That's not going to stop whoever's doing this. Angela crossed her arms. What do you want to do? Claire looked up. I want to finish this. How? By not backing down. Angela studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, but you're not doing this alone. From now on, you've got an escort to and from your car. No exceptions. Angela? No exceptions. Claire exhaled. Fine. But as she left the supply room and returned to work, she felt the walls closing in. 3 days later, the first brick came through her window. It was 1:47 a.m. Claire was asleep when the sound of shattering glass jolted her awake. She rolled out of bed, heart hammering, and crouched low. Glass covered the floor. A brick sat in the middle of the room, wrapped in paper. She grabbed her phone, dialed 911. Someone just threw a brick through my window. The operator's voice was calm. Are you safe? For now. Police are on the way. Stay on the line. Claire moved to the corner, away from the window, and waited. 5 minutes later, sirens. Flashing lights. 2 officers at her door. She let them in, showed them the brick. One of them unwrapped the paper. A message, written in block letters. Back off. The officer looked up. You know who did this? Claire's voice was steady. I have an idea. They took photos, collected evidence, filed a report. But as they left, one of them paused at the door. You're the nurse, aren't you? The one from the Dunfield case. Claire nodded. He hesitated. Look, I don't know what's going on, but be careful. Not everyone in the department thinks you did the right thing. And then he was gone. Claire stood alone in her apartment, staring at the broken window, the brick, the message. She pulled out her phone and called Vasquez. It's escalating, she said when the captain answered. I know. I just got the report. What are you going to do about it? Everything I can. But Claire, you need to understand, this might get worse before it gets better. I know. Do you have somewhere else you can stay? Claire looked around her apartment, the place she'd called home for 3 years. No, she said quietly. Then we'll increase patrols in your area, but I can't guarantee your safety. I'm not asking you to. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. You're tougher than most people I know. I don't feel tough. That's because you're smart enough to know what you're up against. The call ended. Claire taped cardboard over the broken window, swept up the glass, and sat on the couch until the sun came up. When her alarm went off at 5:30, she got up, showered, and went to work. Because that's what she did. And no threat, no brick, no message was going to change that. But as she drove through the empty streets, one thought kept circling in her mind. How much further was she willing to go? The answer came to her somewhere between the third cup of coffee and the moment she walked through the ER doors at 6:52 a.m. As far as it takes. Claire clocked in, tied her hair back, and moved through the morning routine like nothing had changed. But everything had. The brick, the message, the calls, the feeling of being hunted in her own city. She wasn't going to run. Dr. Patel noticed immediately. He always did. You look like hell. Thanks. I mean it. When's the last time you slept? Claire pulled on gloves, checked the crash cart inventory. I'm fine. That's not an answer. She looked up, met his eyes. Someone threw a brick through my window last night. Patel went still. What? Had a message on it. Told me to back off. Did you call the police? Yeah, they took a report. Vasquez is increasing patrols. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter? Patel's voice rose slightly. Claire, someone's threatening you. I know. And you're just going to keep working? What else am I supposed to do? He stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. You're insane. Probably. But before he could respond, the radio crackled. Incoming trauma. Multi-vehicle accident on Highway 101. 3 critical. ETA 4 minutes. Claire stripped off the gloves, grabbed a fresh pair. We're up. Patel hesitated, then followed her toward the trauma bay. The next hour was controlled chaos. Blood, broken bones, a woman in her 30s with a punctured lung, a teenage kid with head trauma. An older man whose leg was crushed so badly they had to call orthopedics immediately. Claire moved through it all with precision. IV lines, chest tubes, medications. She'd done this hundreds of times, in worse conditions, with fewer resources. By 8:30, 2 patients were stable and headed to surgery. The third, the teenager, was intubated and holding on by a thread. Claire stood at the sink, scrubbing blood off her hands, when Angela appeared beside her. Legal called. They want to see you. Claire didn't look up. When? Now. She dried her hands, followed Angela to the second floor. The same conference room, the same uncomfortable chairs. But this time there were 4 people waiting. Rachel Klein, Tom Brennan, a man she didn't recognize in a dark suit, and Captain Vasquez. Claire stopped in the doorway. What's going on? Klein gestured to a chair. Sit, please. Claire sat. The man in the suit leaned forward. Miss Whitaker, I'm Agent Derek Landry, FBI. I'm here because the situation with Officer Dunfield has escalated beyond local jurisdiction. Claire's pulse ticked up. FBI? The harassment you've been experiencing, the calls, the brick, it's crossed into federal territory. Intimidation of a witness in a criminal case falls under our purview. Brennan spoke up. We've been monitoring the situation, the phone records, the incident reports. Whoever's doing this is organized, methodical. You think it's Dunfield? We don't know, Vasquez said. He posted bail yesterday, but we've had him under surveillance since then. He hasn't left his apartment. So it's someone else, Landry nodded. Possibly someone connected to him. A friend? Family? Another officer. The room went cold. Claire's voice came out flat. You're saying a cop might be doing this. We're saying it's a possibility we can't ignore. Klein leaned forward. That's why we're here. We need to know if you want protection. What kind of protection? Safe house, relocation, until the trial's over. Claire stared at her. You want me to go into hiding? We want you safe. For how long? 6 weeks, maybe 8. Claire laughed, sharp and bitter. I can't just disappear for 2 months. You can if the alternative is getting hurt. I have a job, patients who need me. Angela, who'd been standing near the door, spoke quietly. We can cover your shifts. Claire turned to look at her. You're siding with them? I'm siding with you staying alive. The silence stretched. Landry pulled a folder from his briefcase. This is what we know. 3 separate block numbers have called you 17 times in the last week, all from burner phones purchased at different locations across the city. The brick was thrown from a vehicle. We have partial plate footage from a neighbor's camera. The handwriting on the note matches samples we've pulled from online forums where officers discuss pending cases. Claire felt her stomach twist. You're telling me this is coordinated. We're telling you it's serious. She looked at each of them in turn. Klein, Brennan, Vasquez, Landry, all of them waiting for her to make the smart choice, the safe choice. She took a breath. No. Klein blinked. No? I'm not going into hiding. Miss Whitaker, I didn't do anything wrong. I filed a report. I told the truth. I'm not the one who should be running. Landry's expression didn't change. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about survival. Then I'll survive here. You're putting yourself at risk. I've been at risk before. Vasquez leaned forward. Claire, this isn't a war zone. You don't have backup here. Claire met her eyes. Yes, I do. I have the law. I have the truth. And I have the fact that I'm not the one breaking it. The room went silent. Klein exhaled slowly. If you won't accept protection, at least let us increase security. Escort service, monitoring. Fine. And you'll keep us updated on any contact, any threats. I already am. Landry closed his folder. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Maybe. But I'm not running. He stood, nodded once. Then we'll do what we can from our end. But if this escalates further, we're pulling you out, whether you agree or not. Claire didn't respond. They filed out one by one, leaving her alone with Angela. Angela sat down across from her. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's not smart. Probably not. Angela shook her head. You're going to give me a heart attack. Get in line. But as Claire left the conference room and returned to the ER, the weight of the decision settled over her like a lead blanket. She'd just refused federal protection, and whoever was out there, watching, waiting, they'd know it soon enough. The first sign came that night. Claire was walking to her car at 7:15 p.m., flanked by 2 security guards per Angela's orders, when she noticed the envelope tucked under her windshield wiper. She stopped. "Don't touch it." One of the guards pulled on gloves, lifted it carefully. Plain white envelope. No markings. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Claire walking into her apartment building, taken from across the street. Recent. She was wearing the jacket she'd worn 2 days ago. On the back, written in the same block letters as the brick, "We know where you sleep." The guard's face went pale. "We need to call this in." Claire pulled out her phone, dialed Vasquez. "They're watching my building," Vasquez swore. "When?" "I just found a photo, taken within the last 48 hours. Stay there. I'm sending a unit." 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived. Officers secured the area, took the photo, canvassed the street. But there were no cameras nearby. No witnesses. Whoever had taken it was already gone. One of the officers, a younger guy with earnest eyes, approached Claire. "Ma'am, you really should consider relocating. I've been told. I'm serious. Whoever's doing this, they're escalating." "I know." "Then why are you still here?" Claire looked at him for a long moment. "Because if I leave, they win." He didn't have an answer for that. She drove home with a patrol car following her, parked in the garage, took the elevator up, unlocked her door, checked every room, locked it behind her. Then she sat on the couch and stared at the cardboard-covered window. Her phone buzzed. Text from Vasquez. "Surveillance approved. Unmarked car will be stationed outside your building 24/7. Claire typed back. "Thanks." But as she set the phone down, she knew it wouldn't be enough. Whoever was doing this, they were patient, smart. They'd wait for the right moment, and when it came, she'd have to be ready. 3 days passed. The unmarked car sat outside her building every night. Patrols increased around the hospital. Security walked her to and from her car without fail. But the calls kept coming, silent, breathing, disconnect. Claire stopped answering entirely. Just let them pile up in voicemail, dozens of them, a digital record of harassment that Landry's team was tracking but couldn't stop. At work, she kept her head down. Patients, procedures, paperwork. The ER didn't care about her problems. It just kept throwing broken bodies at her, and she kept fixing them. On the 4th night, the pattern changed. Claire was restocking the med card at 11:47 p.m. when her phone rang. Not a block number this time. A local one she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice, shaky and scared. "Is this Claire Whitaker?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Sarah Dunfield. I'm Marcus's wife." Claire's blood went cold. "How did you get this number?" "Please, just listen. I need to talk to you." "I can't. It's about Marcus. And what's happening to you?" Claire pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "What about it?" Sarah's voice cracked. "It's not him. He's not the one calling you. He's not the one who threw the brick." "Then who is?" "I don't know. But he's scared. And I'm scared. And I think whoever's doing this is trying to frame him." Claire's mind raced. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because if this goes to trial, he's going to lose everything. His job, his pension, maybe his freedom. And I know he made mistakes, but he's not a stalker. He's not violent. He violated a restraining order. He was desperate. He thought if he could just talk to you, that's not how the law works." Sarah was silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, "I know. And I know you don't owe me anything. But if there's any way you could talk to the DA, tell them he's not the one doing this. I can't do that. Please." Claire closed her eyes. "Sarah, I'm sorry. But your husband made choices that put him here. What happens next is between him and the court. They're going to destroy him. He destroyed himself." The line went quiet. Then Sarah whispered, "You really don't care, do you?" "I care about the truth. And the truth is your husband abused his authority, multiple times, against multiple people. If he's being harassed now, that's not my fault." Sarah's voice turned cold. "You're going to regret this." "Is that a threat?" "It's a prediction." The line went dead. Claire stood there, phone in hand, pulse hammering. She immediately called Vasquez. "I just got a call from Dunfield's wife." "What did she say?" Claire repeated the conversation word for word. When she finished, Vasquez swore softly. "That's witness intimidation." "I know." "Did she threaten you directly?" "Not in so many words, but the implication was clear." "I'll have someone pick her up for questioning." "And Dunfield?" "We'll bring him in too. Find out if he put her up to it." Claire ended the call and leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. This was spiraling, fast. The next morning, Sarah Dunfield was questioned for 2 hours and released. She claimed she'd acted alone, that Marcus didn't know about the call, that she was just trying to help her husband. No charges were filed, but the incident report went into the case file. And the noose around Marcus Dunfield tightened a little more. Claire heard about it from Klein during a brief check-in call. "She's either lying or she really is acting independently," Klein said. "Either way, it's not helping his case." "What happens now?" "Preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. We're pushing for the stalking charge to stick. If Sarah keeps inserting herself, it'll only make things worse for him." "And the harassment I'm dealing with?" "FBI's still tracking it. No breaks yet." Claire hung up and tried to focus on work. But the knot in her stomach wouldn't loosen. That night, she drove home with the usual patrol escort, parked in the garage, took the elevator up, and found her apartment door slightly ajar. She stopped 3 feet away, heart slamming against her ribs. The deadbolt was intact. The frame wasn't damaged, but the door was open maybe half an inch, just enough to notice. She pulled out her phone, dialed 911. "Someone's been in my apartment." And the operator dispatched officers immediately. Claire waited in the hallway, back against the wall, eyes locked on the door. 5 minutes. Then footsteps. 2 officers appeared, weapons drawn. "Stay here." They entered, cleared each room. When they emerged, one of them looked grim. "You need to see this." Claire followed them inside. Her living room was untouched. Kitchen, the same. But in her bedroom, on the wall above her bed, someone had spray-painted a message in red. "Last warning." Her hand shook. The officer turned to her. "You can't stay here." "I know. Do you have somewhere you can go?" Claire thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah." She packed a bag, clothes, toiletries, essentials, while the officers documented the scene. 20 minutes later, she was in her car, driving across the city to the only place she could think of, Dr. Patel's house. He answered the door in sweatpants and a faded medical school t-shirt, blinking in surprise. "Claire?" "They broke into my apartment." His expression shifted instantly. "Come in." She stepped inside and he closed the door behind her. "Tell me everything." She did. The door, the message, the escalation. When she finished, Patel ran a hand through his hair. "You're staying here. No arguments." "I can't." "Yes, you can. I've got a guest room. You'll be safe." Claire felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, just shifting. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll actually sleep." She managed a small smile. "I'll try." That night, she lay in Patel's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of someone else's house. But for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. The preliminary hearing was set for the following Tuesday. Claire spent the weekend at Patel's house, avoiding the news, avoiding her phone, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy. On Monday, Klein called. "We've got a problem." Claire's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Dunfield's attorney filed a motion to suppress your testimony. They're claiming the initial incident was entrapment, that you provoked him." "That's insane." "I know, but they're going to argue it in court. Can they win?" "Not if the judge is reasonable, but it complicates things." Claire closed her eyes. "What do you need from me?" "Just be ready to testify, and don't let them rattle you." "I won't." But as she hung up, she felt the pressure building again. Tomorrow, she'd be in that courtroom, face to face with Dunfield and his attorney, and whatever happened next would determine everything. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray. Claire dressed carefully. Slacks, blouse, blazer. Professional. Calm. She checked her reflection in the mirror, steadied her breathing, and headed out. Patel drove her to the courthouse. You want me to come in? No, but thank you. Call me when it's over. She nodded and got out. Inside, the courthouse was already packed. Reporters lined the hallways, cameras flashed. Claire kept her head down, walked straight to the courtroom. Klein met her at the doors. You ready? As I'll ever be. They entered together. The gallery was full. Claire took a seat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table. Across the aisle, Dunfield sat with his attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Brennan, no relation to the investigator. Dunfield didn't look at her. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Be seated. The preliminary hearing began. Victoria Brennan stood first. Your Honor, the defense moves to suppress the testimony of Claire Whitaker on the grounds that her actions constituted entrapment. The judge looked over his glasses. On what basis? Miss Whitaker is a former military medic with training in conflict de-escalation. She deliberately provoked my client, knowing he would react, in order to create grounds for a complaint. Klein shot to her feet. That's absurd, Your Honor. Miss Whitaker was performing her job. She followed hospital protocol and federal law. Officer Dunfield chose to escalate. She refused a lawful request. It wasn't lawful. He had no warrant. Victoria turned to the judge. My client was acting under exigent circumstances. Time was critical. Then he should have obtained emergency authorization through proper channels, Klein shot back. The judge held up a hand. I'll hear testimony. Call your first witness. Klein nodded. The prosecution calls Claire Whitaker. Claire stood, walked to the witness stand, and was sworn in. Klein approached. Miss Whitaker, can you describe what happened on the night of March 12th? Claire took a breath. Then she told the story. Calmly, precisely. Every detail. When she finished, Victoria Brennan stood for cross-examination. Miss Whitaker, you were trained in conflict de-escalation, correct? Yes. So you knew how to handle confrontational situations. I was trained to follow protocol. But you also knew how to manipulate a situation to achieve a desired outcome. Klein objected. Speculation. Sustained. Victoria didn't miss a beat. Isn't it true that you could have de-escalated the situation by simply providing the information? No, that would have been illegal. But you could have explained that more diplomatically. Claire's jaw tightened. I did explain it. He chose not to listen. Or perhaps you chose not to make it clear enough. I was perfectly clear, Victoria smiled. Were you, or were you looking for a reason to file a complaint? Klein stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, counselor. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt was planted. Victoria continued for another 20 minutes, trying to paint Claire as manipulative, calculating, someone with an axe to grind. Claire answered every question the same way, calm, factual, unshaken. When Victoria finally sat down, Klein stood for redirect. Miss Whitaker, did you want Officer Dunfield to react the way he did? No. Did you provoke him in any way? No. Did you follow hospital protocol and federal law? Yes. Thank you. No further questions. Claire stepped down. The hearing continued. Testimonies from Angela Torres, from Dr. Patel, from the other complainants. By 3 p.m., it was over. The judge took a 15-minute recess, then returned. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony, I find sufficient cause to proceed to trial. The motion to suppress is denied. Victoria's face tightened. Dunfield's shoulders slumped. The judge set a trial date, 6 weeks out, and adjourned. Claire stood, legs shaky, and walked out of the courtroom. Outside, Klein caught up with her. You did great. Didn't feel like it. Trust me, you were solid. Claire nodded, but she felt hollow. She texted Patel. It's over, heading out. His reply came immediately. I'll pick you up. But as she walked toward the courthouse steps, someone grabbed her arm. She spun. Sarah Dunfield stood there, eyes red, face twisted with rage. You just destroyed my family. Claire pulled her arm free. Let go of me. He's going to lose everything because of you. That's not my fault. Sarah stepped closer, voice dropping to a hiss. You're going to pay for this. A security guard appeared. Ma'am, step back. Sarah didn't move. Her eyes locked on Claire's, burning with something close to hatred. Then she turned and walked away. Claire stood there, pulse hammering, watching her disappear into the crowd. The guard looked at her. "You okay?" "Yeah." But she wasn't, not even close. She walked out of this courthouse, into the gray afternoon light, and pulled out her phone to call Vasquez. But before she could dial, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. Agent Landry leaned out. "Get in." Claire froze. "What's going on?" "We've got a situation. Get in. Now." Something in his tone made her move. She climbed into the back seat. The door slammed shut. The SUV pulled away from the curb, tires squealing. "What happened?" Claire demanded. Landry turned in the front seat, face grim. "We just intercepted a call. Someone's planning to hit you tonight." Claire's blood turned to ice. "What?" "We don't have all the details yet, but the threat is credible. We're moving you to a safe location." "Where?" "You'll know when we get there." The SUV merged onto the highway, accelerating hard. Claire gripped the seat, heart pounding. "Who's behind this?" Landry's jaw tightened. "We're still trying to figure that out." But as the city blurred past the window, Claire realized something. This wasn't just about Dunfield anymore. This was bigger. And whoever was hunting her wasn't going to stop until she was gone. The SUV took a hard left onto an unmarked road, and Claire grabbed the door handle to steady herself. Through the tinted windows, the city gave way to industrial sprawl. Warehouses, chain-link fences, the kind of area where nobody asked questions. "Where are we going?" she asked again. Landry didn't turn around. "Federal safe house, 20 minutes out." "And then what?" "Then we figure out who wants you dead." The driver, a younger agent with a buzz cut, glanced in the rearview mirror. "We've got a tail." Landry's hand moved to his hip. "How far back?" 3 cars, black sedan, tinted windows. "Lose them." The SUV accelerated, weaving through traffic. Claire twisted in her seat, trying to see, but the sedan kept pace, matching every turn. "They're not backing off," the driver said. Landry pulled his phone, dialed. "This is Landry. We've got a hostile vehicle in pursuit, requesting backup at our current location." He listened for a second. "Copy that." He hung up and looked at Claire. "Sit tight. This might get rough." The sedan closed the gap, 50 feet, 40. Then the driver hit the brakes hard. Claire lurched forward, seatbelt catching. The SUV swerved right, onto an off-ramp. The sedan followed, tires screeching. "They're committed," the driver said. Landry's jaw tightened. "Take the next left. There's a substation 2 blocks up. We'll have backup there." But before they could turn, the sedan pulled alongside them. The rear window rolled down. Claire saw the barrel of a gun. "Down!" Landry shouted. She dropped to the floor as the first shot shattered the rear passenger window. Glass exploded inward. The SUV swerved hard, tires screaming. 2 more shots. One hit the side panel. The other missed. The driver floored it, pulling ahead. The sedan followed, relentless. "How much further?" Landry barked. 1 block. They careened around a corner, and suddenly there were flashing lights. 2 patrol cars blocking the intersection. The sedan braked hard, spun out, and reversed course. Within seconds, it was gone. The SUV skidded to a stop. Landry kicked open his door, weapon drawn, scanning the area. The local officers approached, hands on their holsters. "You guys okay?" Landry flashed his badge. "FBI, we're secure. I need you to put out an APB on a black sedan, partial plate." He rattled off the numbers the driver had called out. Claire sat up slowly, brushing glass off her jacket. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline catching up. Landry opened her door. "You hurt?" "No." "Good. Let's move." They transferred her to one of the patrol cars. 5 minutes later, they were pulling into a nondescript office building with underground parking. No signage, no windows on the ground floor. Inside, the safe house was exactly what Claire expected. Bare walls, cheap furniture, cameras in every corner. Landry gestured to a chair. "Sit. We need to debrief." Claire sat. "Who were they?" "We don't know yet. But someone knew you'd be at that courthouse today. Someone knew the route we'd take. And someone was willing to kill you in broad daylight." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have right now." Another agent appeared, laptop in hand. "We're running the partial plate. Should have something in an hour." Landry nodded. "Good. In the meantime, I want a full sweep of Whitaker's communications, phone records, emails, everything. Already on it. Claire leaned back in the chair, closing her eyes. This is insane. Yeah, Landry said quietly. It is. The safe house had a small kitchen, a bathroom that smelled like industrial cleaner, and 2 bedrooms with locks on the outside. Claire sat at the metal table while agents moved around her, voices low, phones constantly buzzing. She tried to process what had just happened. Someone had fired at a federal vehicle, at her, in the middle of the day. This wasn't harassment anymore. This was attempted murder. Her phone, still in her pocket, buzzed. She pulled it out. Text from Patel. Where are you? Angela says you left with FBI. She typed back, safe. Can't talk now. I'll call when I can. His response came immediately. Are you in danger? She stared at the screen, then typed, not anymore. But even as she sent it, she wasn't sure it was true. Landry reappeared with a bottle of water. Drink. She took it, hands still unsteady. How long do I have to stay here? Until we neutralize the threat. How long is that? As long as it takes. Claire twisted the cap off the bottle. I have patience, a job. You have people trying to kill you. That takes priority. Easy for you to say. Landry pulled out a chair, sat across from her. Look, I get it. You want your life back. But right now, your life is the target. So unless you want to end up in a morgue, you stay put. Claire drank the water, said nothing. We'll figure this out, Landry continued. We always do. But you need to trust the process. The process almost got me shot. The process is why you're still alive. She couldn't argue with that. 3 hours later, they had a name. The sedan was registered to a shell company. The shell company traced back to a private security firm. And the private security firm had one very interesting client on its books, Officer Marcus Dunfield. Landry dropped the file on the table in front of Claire. He hired them. Claire stared at the paperwork. When? 2 weeks ago, right after he posted bail. So he's been planning this. Looks that way. Claire's pulse hammered. What about his wife? Sarah. We're bringing her in for questioning now. And Dunfield? Already issued a warrant. He's going down for conspiracy to commit murder. Claire exhaled slowly. You're sure it's him? Landry met her eyes. Payment came from his account. Contract has his signature. We're sure. But even as he said it, something in Claire's gut twisted. It felt too clean, too easy. What about the harassment before this? The calls? The brick? The break-in? Landry hesitated. We're still connecting those dots. You don't think it's all him. I think he's part of it, but there's something else going on. Like what? That's what we're going to find out. A knock at the door. Another agent poked his head in. Dunfield's in custody. Picked him up at his apartment 10 minutes ago. Landry stood. Good. Let's go talk to him. He looked at Claire. You should stay here. No. This isn't up for debate. I want to see him. Landry studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Fine. But you stay behind the glass. You don't engage. Deal. The interrogation facility was attached to the federal building, accessed through a series of secure corridors that required 3 different badges to navigate. Claire followed Landry through checkpoints, past holding cells, into the observation area. The interrogation room was small and windowless, with a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 chairs. Dunfield sat in one of them, hands cuffed in front of him, looking smaller than Claire remembered. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. She watched from behind the one-way glass as Landry and another agent entered. Landry sat across from Dunfield. You want to tell me about the sedan? Dunfield looked up. What sedan? The one that shot at a federal agent and a witness 2 hours ago. Dunfield's face went slack. I don't know what you're talking about. It's registered to a company you hired. I didn't hire anyone. Landry slid a printout across the table. This is a contract. Your signature. Payment records. You hired a private security firm 2 weeks ago. Dunfield stared at the paper. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, I didn't. Then who did? I don't know. Landry leaned forward. Marcus, you're already looking at stalking, intimidation, and violation of a restraining order. Now we're adding conspiracy to commit murder. You're done. The only question is how long you go away for." Dunfield's hands shook. "I didn't try to kill anyone." "Then who did?" "I don't know." His voice cracked. Claire watched his face, studied his body language. The panic was real. The confusion was real. He was telling the truth. Landry let the silence stretch. Then he said quietly, "Your wife called Claire Whitaker, threatened her. Did you tell her to do that?" "No." "Did you tell her anything about the case?" Dunfield's jaw worked. "I told her I was in trouble, that I might lose everything." "And what did she say?" "She said she'd fix it." Landry and the other agent exchanged a glance. "Fix it how?" Dunfield looked up, eyes wide. "I don't know. I thought she just meant she'd talk to a lawyer or something." "You didn't ask?" "No, I wasn't thinking straight. I just wanted it to go away." Landry stood. "We're done here." He left the room, and Claire met him in the hallway. "He's telling the truth," she said. Landry nodded. "I think so too. So it's not him. It's his wife." Claire's stomach dropped. "Sarah. She's the one who hired the security firm, used his name, his credit card, made it look like he did it." "Why?" "Because if you're dead, the case falls apart. No key witness, no trial. He walks." Claire leaned against the wall. "And she was willing to kill me for that. Apparently. Where is she now? We've got units at her house, but she's not there. So she's running." "Probably." Claire closed her eyes. "This just keeps getting worse." Landry's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. "We've got another problem." "What now?" "Sarah Dunfield just withdrew $50,000 from their joint account, and she bought a plane ticket to Mexico." Claire's pulse spiked. "When does it leave?" 2 hours. Landry was already moving. "Let's go." They took a different vehicle this time, an unmarked sedan with reinforced panels and tinted windows. Claire sat in the back, watching the city blur past as they raced toward the airport. "How did she get the money so fast?" Claire asked. "Joint account," Landry said without turning around. "She had access the whole time, probably been planning this since the arraignment." "And nobody flagged it?" "Bank transactions under $10,000 don't automatically trigger alerts. She was smart, made multiple withdrawals over several days." Claire's hands clenched in her lap. "She's been 3 steps ahead this whole time." "Not anymore. We know where she's going." But Claire couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah had one more move left. Bichet? The airport was chaos. Landry's team coordinated with TSA, pulling security footage, tracking Sarah's movements. She checked in at 4:47 p.m., cleared security at 5:02. Her flight to Cabo San Lucas was boarding in 40 minutes. Claire waited in a back office while Landry and his team set up the intercept. Through the window, she could see the terminal. Thousands of people, oblivious to the hunt happening around them. Landry appeared, earpiece in, phone to his ear. "We've got eyes on her. Gate 23. She's in the boarding area. Can you grab her before she gets on the plane?" "We're moving now." Claire watched through the glass as 4 agents in plainclothes converged on the gate. She couldn't see Sarah from this angle, but she saw the agents stop, surround someone, and then the commotion began. A woman's voice, raised and angry. People turning to look. Security closing in. Landry's phone rang. He answered, listened, then hung up. "We've got her." Claire exhaled, but the relief didn't come. Something still felt wrong. 10 minutes later, Sarah Dunfield was escorted through the terminal in handcuffs, flanked by agents. She looked different than she had at the courthouse. Disheveled, panicked, her polished facade completely shattered. As they passed the office window, Sarah's eyes locked on Claire's. Not hatred this time, something else. Triumph. Claire's breath caught. Wait. But Sarah was already past, disappeared into a back corridor. Landry stepped into the office. "She's lawyering up, but we've got enough to charge her." "With what?" "Conspiracy to commit murder, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice. She's not getting out." Claire stared at the empty hallway. "Something's wrong." "What do you mean?" She looked at me, and she was smiling. Landry frowned. "She's probably just unhinged." "No, she knows something we don't." "Like what?" Claire shook her head. "I don't know, but this doesn't feel finished." Landry's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went pale. "What?" Claire demanded. He looked up. "We just got a tip. Anonymous. Says there's a second contract, another team." Claire's blood turned to ice. "When?" "Tonight." "Where?" Landry's jaw tightened. Silverline Medical Center. Stunned. The drive back was silent. Claire's mind raced. Sarah had been arrested. Dunfield was in custody. But someone else was still out there, still following through on a plan that had been set in motion before either of them were caught. "How do we stop it?" Claire asked. "We're deploying a team to the hospital now. Full lockdown protocol. Nobody gets in or out without clearance." "And the staff? The patients? We'll evacuate if we have to, but right now we're treating this as a credible threat." Claire's phone rang. Angela's name on the screen. She answered. "Angela, where are you? FBI agents just showed up and they're shutting down the ER. I know, there's a threat. You need to evacuate." "What kind of threat?" "The kind that involves people with guns. Get everyone out, now." Angela's voice went hard. "Copy that." The line went dead. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to Silverline Medical Center. The parking lot was swarming with federal agents, local police, and hospital security. Ambulances were being diverted. Patients were being moved to nearby facilities. Claire stepped out of the sedan and saw Angela coordinating the evacuation, clipboard in hand, voice calm but commanding. Dr. Patel appeared beside her. "What the hell is going on?" "Someone's planning to hit the hospital tonight." His face went pale. "Why?" "Because I work here." Landry approached, earpiece in. "We're setting up a perimeter, snipers on the roof, plainclothes inside. If they come, we'll be ready." Claire looked up at the building. "How many people are still inside?" "Skeleton crew, security, a few critical patients who can't be moved." "I should be in there." "Absolutely not. If they're coming for me, You should stay here behind cover and let us do our job." Claire wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. They waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Night fell. The hospital lights blazed against the dark sky. And then, at 9:47 p.m., Landry's radio crackled. "Movement. East entrance. 2 suspects. Armed." Landry's hand went to his weapon. "All units stand by." Claire watched from behind a patrol car as shadows moved near the building. 2 figures dressed in dark clothing, carrying what looked like duffel bags. "Do not engage," Landry said into his radio. "Let them get inside. We take them in the corridor." The figures entered through a service door. 30 seconds later, the radio crackled again. "Suspects in custody. No shots fired." Landry exhaled. "Clear the building. I want a full sweep." Claire's legs felt weak. "Is it over?" "Let's find out." They entered the hospital through the main entrance. The ER was eerily quiet. Lights on, but no patients, no staff. Just agents moving through hallways, clearing rooms. Landry led her to a conference room where the 2 suspects sat in handcuffs, surrounded by agents. One of them looked up as Claire entered. Young, maybe mid-20s, scared. "Who hired you?" Landry demanded. The kid shook his head. "I want a lawyer. You're looking at federal charges. Attempted murder, conspiracy. You help us now, we can work something out." The kid glanced at his partner, then back at Landry. "It was anonymous. We got paid through cryptocurrency. Never saw who hired us." "What were you supposed to do?" The kid swallowed hard. "Plant explosives. Make it look like a gas leak." Claire's stomach turned. "How were you supposed to know when to detonate?" "Text message, we were supposed to wait for the signal." Landry looked at the other agent. "Get their phones. Trace the number." But even as he said it, Claire knew it would lead nowhere. Whoever was behind this had covered their tracks too well. She stepped out of the room, needing air. Angela found her in the hallway. "You okay?" "They were going to blow up the hospital." Angela's face went tight. "But they didn't." "Because we got lucky." "No, because you did the right thing, and people stepped up to protect you." Claire leaned against the wall. "When does this end?" "When we find whoever's pulling the strings." But that was the problem. They'd caught Dunfield, they'd caught Sarah, they'd stopped the hit team, and still someone out there was orchestrating all of it. Someone with resources, connections. Someone who could hire professionals, move money, Stay hidden. Landry reappeared. We're tracing the crypto wallet, but it's going to take time. How much time? Days? Maybe weeks. Claire closed her eyes. So we're back where we started. Not quite. We know there's someone else, and now we're looking for them. But Claire felt the walls closing in again. Every time they caught someone, another layer revealed itself. How deep did this go? Damned. 3 days later, Claire returned to Silverline Medical Center. The hospital had reopened. The ER was back to normal. Patients, chaos. The familiar rhythm. But security had tripled. Armed guards at every entrance, metal detectors, ID checks. Claire moved through it all, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy. Angela pulled her aside during the first break. You sure you're ready? I have to be. That's not an answer. Claire met her eyes. I'm here. That's all I've got. Angela nodded slowly. Okay. But if you need to step out, you step out. No questions. Thanks. The shift passed in a blur. Patients, procedures, the work she knew how to do. But at 3 p.m., Rachel Klein appeared in the hallway. Claire's stomach tightened. What's wrong? Nothing. Actually, something good. What? Klein pulled her into a quiet corner. Dunfield took a plea. Claire blinked. What? His attorney contacted us this morning. He's pleading guilty to all charges. No trial. Why? Because with Sarah's arrest, his case fell apart. And he knows if this goes to trial, he's looking at 10 years minimum. The plea gets him 3, with possibility of parole. Claire felt something loosen in her chest. So it's over. The criminal case against him? Yeah. But there's still the civil side. The hospital's filing a lawsuit. So are the other complainants. And me? You can join if you want, but you don't have to. Claire thought for a moment. I just want to move on. Klein nodded. I get that. But you should know, what you did here, it matters. You stood up when most people would have folded. You stopped a pattern of abuse that's been going on for years. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like much. That's because you're still in it. Give it time. Klein left, and Claire returned to the nurse's station. Dr. Patel looked up. Everything okay? Dunfield took a plea. Patel's eyebrows rose. That was fast. Yeah. How do you feel? Claire paused. Relieved and tired. That's fair. She pulled on fresh gloves, checked the patient board. What's next? Bed 4. Guy with a fishhook in his hand. Claire almost smiled. Of course there is. And just like that, she was back. But that night, as she drove to Patel's house, her phone rang. Landry. We've got a break. Claire's pulse kicked up. What kind of break? The crypto wallet. We traced it through 3 different exchanges. It leads back to a single account. Whose? You're not going to believe this. Try me. Landry paused. Officer Justin Reeves. He works in RCPD's evidence division. Claire's breath caught. He's a cop? Yeah. And he's been working with Sarah Dunfield for 6 months. We've got emails, financial records. He's the one who fed her your information, your schedule, your address, everything. Claire pulled over to the side of the road, hands shaking. Why? We're still piecing it together, but it looks like he and Dunfield go way back. Military buddies. And when Dunfield got in trouble, Reeves decided to help. By trying to kill me. By trying to make the problem go away. Yeah. Claire stared through the windshield at nothing. Where is he now? We're moving to arrest him as we speak, but Claire, there's something else. Her stomach dropped. What? Reeves has been monitoring our investigation. He knows we're on to him. So he's running. Or he's making a last move. Claire's blood went cold. What do you mean? We think he's coming for you. Tonight. Claire's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Where? We don't know. But he logged into the surveillance system 20 minutes ago. He knows where you are. Her pulse hammered. I'm on the road, heading to Patel's. Turn around. Now. We're sending units to intercept, but you need to get somewhere public. Somewhere with cameras and witnesses. Claire checked her mirrors. Empty road behind her, streetlights casting long shadows. Then she saw headlights appear in the distance. Landry. What? There's a car behind me. Can you see the make? The headlights grew closer, fast. Dark SUV, tinted windows. That's him. Floor it. Claire slammed the accelerator. Her sedan lurched forward, engine screaming. The SUV matched her speed, closing the gap. He's staying with me. Where are you? Highway 84, heading west, just past Morrison Avenue. Backup's 8 minutes out. You need to stay ahead of him. The SUV pulled into the left lane, accelerating. Claire pushed her car harder, but it wasn't built for this. The SUV drew level, and she caught a glimpse of the driver. Male, 30s, buzz cut, face locked in concentration. Officer Justin Reeves. He swerved toward her. Claire yanked the wheel right, tires squealing. Her car skidded onto the shoulder, gravel spraying. She fought for control, jerked back onto the pavement. The SUV dropped back, then accelerated again. He's trying to run me off the road, Claire said, voice tight. Stay on the line, keep moving. Ahead, an intersection, red light. Claire blew through it. Horns blared. A sedan swerved, nearly clipping her rear bumper. The SUV followed, relentless. There's a shopping center 2 miles ahead, Landry said. Get there, get inside, we'll have units waiting. Claire's hands ached from gripping the wheel. She took the next turn hard, tires protesting. The SUV stayed on her, inches from her bumper now. Then it rammed her. The impact threw her forward. Seatbelt caught. Her car fishtailed, rear end sliding left. She corrected, barely kept it on the road. He just hit me. I know. Keep going. Another ram. Harder this time. Her rearview mirror shattered. The shopping center appeared ahead, massive parking lot, lit up like daylight. Claire aimed for it, pushing her dying engine as hard as it would go. The SUV rammed her again. Her car spun. She lost control completely, the world rotating in slow motion. Then impact. Her sedan slammed into a light pole, airbag deploying with a thunderous crack. Everything stopped. Claire's ears rang. Her face burned from the airbag. She tasted blood. The driver's door was jammed. Through the spider-webbed windshield, she saw the SUV pull up 20 feet away. The door opened. Reeves stepped out, something dark in his hand. A gun. Claire's training kicked in. She unbuckled, shoved against the door. It didn't budge. She climbed over the center console, kicked open the passenger door, and tumbled out onto pavement. Her phone was still connected. Landry. We're 3 minutes out. Stay down. But Reeves was already crossing the parking lot toward her. Claire scrambled behind her wrecked car, putting metal between them. Her ribs screamed. Her vision swam. Claire Whitaker. Reeves's voice was calm, almost conversational. You should have backed off when you had the chance. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her lungs wouldn't work right. I gave you every opportunity, the calls, the warnings, but you just kept pushing. Claire's hand found broken glass. She gripped a shard, ignoring the pain as it cut into her palm. Reeves rounded the car. She was out of options, but then headlights flooded the parking lot. Tires screeched. Doors slammed. FBI, drop the weapon. Reeves spun, gun coming up. Don't do it. Landry's voice amplified. Put it down. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Reeves smiled. You think this ends with me? And he raised the gun toward Claire. 4 shots rang out simultaneously. Reeves dropped, weapon clattering across pavement. His body convulsed once, then went still. Agents swarmed the scene. Landry appeared at Claire's side, lowering his weapon. You hit? She shook her head, unable to speak. Medic, Landry shouted. Paramedics materialized. They guided her to an ambulance, checked her vitals, cleaned the cut on her hand. Everything felt distant, muted. She watched agents secure the scene. Watched them cover Reeves's body with a tarp. Watched the flashing lights paint everything red and blue. Someone was talking to her. A paramedic asking questions she couldn't process. Her mouth moved, forming answers she didn't remember giving. Landry climbed into the ambulance. You're going to the hospital. I'm fine. You were just in a car accident and almost shot. You're going. She didn't have the energy to argue. The ambulance doors closed, and they pulled away from the scene. Through the rear window, Claire watched the parking lot recede, agents still working, cordoning off evidence, documenting everything. Her phone buzzed. Patel's name on the screen, she answered. I'm okay. What happened? Angela just called. She saw it on the news. Long story. I'll tell you when I get there. Where are you? Ambulance, heading to Silverline. I'll meet you there. The line went dead. Claire leaned back against the gurney, closing her eyes. The paramedic kept asking questions: pain scale, allergies, last meal. She answered mechanically, her mind elsewhere. Reeves was dead. The man who'd orchestrated everything, who'd fed information to Sarah, who'd enabled the harassment, the stalking, the attempt on her life. Gone. But his last words echoed in her head. You think this ends with me? Silverline Medical Center's ER looked different from a gurney. Claire stared at the ceiling tiles she'd walked past 1,000 times, now seeing them from a patient's perspective. The fluorescent lights were too bright, the sounds too loud, the smell of antiseptic overwhelming. A familiar face appeared above her. Dr. Patel, concern etched across his features. CT scan's clear, he said. No internal bleeding, couple bruised ribs, minor lacerations, mild concussion. You're incredibly lucky. Don't feel lucky. You're alive, that's lucky. Angela appeared on her other side. You gave us a heart attack, again. Claire tried to smile. It hurt. Sorry. Don't apologize, just heal. They kept her overnight for observation. Claire lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The chase, the crash, Reeves's face as he raised the gun, the shots. She'd seen people die before. In field hospitals overseas, death was constant, but this was different. This man had died trying to kill her, and she felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. Around 3 a.m., when the hospital was quiet and the hallways empty, Claire finally slept. She woke to voices outside her room, Landry and Klein, conferring in low tones. When they noticed she was awake, they entered. Klein pulled up a chair. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. Close enough, Klein opened a folder. We need to walk you through what we found. Claire pushed herself up, wincing. Okay. Reeves's apartment was a treasure trove, computers, burner phones, financial records. He wasn't just helping Dunfield, he was running an entire operation. Landry took over. We've identified 7 other officers involved. They were falsifying reports, intimidating witnesses, selling information. It goes back at least 5 years. Claire's stomach turned. 7? That we know of. There might be more. Klein leaned forward. The Redwood City Police Department is facing a complete overhaul. Internal Affairs is gutting every division. The chief is stepping down. This is the biggest corruption scandal the city's seen in 40 years. Because I said no to one officer. Because you exposed a system that protected abusers, Landry corrected. Dunfield was just the visible part. Reeves was the infrastructure, and now it's all coming down. Claire processed that. What about the other officers? Federal charges. Conspiracy, obstruction, witness intimidation. They're all going away for a long time. And Sarah? Still cooperating, giving us everything. She's looking at 15 years minimum, but with full cooperation, maybe 12. Claire nodded slowly. So it's really over. Klein's expression softened. Yeah, it's really over. After they left, Claire sat alone in the hospital room, watching sunlight creep across the floor. 7 officers, years of corruption, lives destroyed, and it had almost destroyed hers too. But she'd survived. They discharged her the next afternoon with prescriptions for pain medication she probably wouldn't take and instructions to rest that she definitely wouldn't follow. Patel drove her back to his house. You're staying another 2 weeks. Minimum. I need to find my own place. You will. After you heal. Claire didn't argue. She was too tired. She spent the next few days in a fog, sleeping, eating when Patel forced her to, ignoring the news coverage that was everywhere. TV, newspapers, social media. Nurses Stand Against Corruption exposes police network. 7 officers arrested in widening scandal. Woman who refused to back down becomes symbol of integrity. Claire hated it. She wasn't a symbol. She was just someone who'd followed the rules and paid the price. On the 4th day, Captain Vasquez called. How are you feeling? Vasquez asked. Like I got hit by a truck and shot at. Close enough, Vasquez paused. I wanted to call personally, to thank you. For what? For not giving up. For standing your ground when every instinct probably told you to run. Claire was quiet for a moment. I was terrified. I know, but you didn't show it. And that made all the difference. What happens now? Now we rebuild. The department's implementing new oversight, independent review boards, mandatory body cameras, anonymous complaint systems. It's going to take years, but we're committed. Will it be enough? I don't know, but it's a start. And the officers who are clean, the ones who didn't know, they're angry, embarrassed, but mostly they're motivated. They want to prove the department can be better. Claire closed her eyes. I hope they're right. So do I. After the call ended, Claire sat on Patel's back porch, watching the sunset. Her ribs ached. Her head throbbed. But for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. It was over. Really over. 2 weeks later, Claire returned to work. The hospital had arranged a small gathering, nothing formal, just the ER staff during a shift change. Angela presented her with a framed certificate of recognition signed by the hospital board and the CEO. Claire accepted it with quiet thanks, feeling awkward under the attention. Dr. Patel raised a coffee cup. To Claire, who reminds us why we got into this profession in the first place. A round of applause. Some whistles. Claire felt her face flush. All right, Angela said. Show's over. We've got patients. Everyone dispersed, returning to work. Claire pinned the certificate to the bulletin board in the break room, then pulled on fresh scrubs and got to work. It felt good to be back, to be useful, to focus on something other than court cases and threats and fear. At 11 p.m., during a rare lull, one of the newer nurses approached her. Young woman, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and a name tag that read Jessica. Can I ask you something? Claire looked up from her charting. Sure. How did you do it? Stand up to a cop like that? Claire set down her pen. I didn't think about it being a cop. I just thought about what was right. But weren't you scared? Terrified. Then how? You do it anyway. Fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you understand the stakes, but you don't let it make your decisions. Jessica nodded slowly. Someone tried to pressure me last week. Not a cop, just someone who thought they could push me around because they're a hospital donor. And I backed down. What happened? They got what they wanted, special treatment for their family member, and I felt terrible. Claire met her eyes. So next time, don't back down. What if they escalate? Then you document it, you report it, you follow protocol, and you don't do it alone. That's what Angela's for. That's what I'm for now. Jessica smiled tentatively. Okay. Thanks. As she walked away, Claire realized something. This was the real impact, not the headlines or the arrests or the policy changes. It was one person finding the courage to speak up because they'd seen someone else do it first. And that courage would ripple outward, touching people she'd never meet. 3 months later, the trials concluded. Sarah Dunfield received 13 years. Marcus Dunfield was already serving his 3-year sentence in a minimum security facility. The 7 officers in Reeves's network all pleaded guilty, sentences ranging from 4 to 12 years, depending on their level of involvement. The Redwood City Police Department underwent a complete restructuring, new chief, new policies, new training programs focused on ethics and accountability. Claire testified in 4 of the cases. Each time, she told the truth calmly and clearly. Each time, justice followed. The civil cases settled quietly. The hospital received significant compensation for the security breaches and harassment of staff. The other complainants, the people who'd come forward after Claire, received settlements too. Claire declined her portion of the civil award, asking instead that it be directed to a fund for healthcare workers facing workplace harassment and retaliation. The media eventually moved on to the next scandal. Claire's name faded from headlines. She found a new apartment closer to the hospital, small but hers. She bought furniture slowly, hung pictures, made it home, and she started sleeping through the night again. 6 months after everything ended, Angela called her into the office. Close the door. Claire sat, curious. Angela slid a folder across the desk. The hospital's creating a new position, patient rights and staff advocacy coordinator, someone who handles complaints, ensures protocol compliance, acts as a liaison between staff and administration when conflicts arise. Claire opened the folder. Job description, salary range, significant increase from her current pay. They want you. Claire looked up. Me? Who better? You've already proven you'll stand up for what's right, even when it costs you, even when it's dangerous. I'm a nurse. You'll still be a nurse. This would be 60% advocacy, 40% clinical, but it would give you a platform to help other people who find themselves in situations like yours. Claire stared at the paperwork. A promotion, recognition, a chance to make systemic change from the inside. Can I think about it? Take a week. But Claire already knew her answer. She just needed time to believe she deserved it. She accepted the position. The transition was rocky at first, learning administrative systems, navigating hospital politics, balancing clinical work with advocacy responsibilities. But she found her rhythm. Within 6 months, complaints of workplace intimidation at Silverline Medical Center dropped by 40%. Staff felt empowered to speak up. Protocols were followed more consistently. Conflicts were resolved before they escalated. Claire developed training programs for new hires, created clear reporting channels, built relationships with legal, security, and human resources. And she kept working shifts in the ER, because that was where she belonged, where she could see the direct impact of her work. Other hospitals in the region started asking for consultations. How did Silverline reduce complaints so dramatically? What systems had they implemented? Claire found herself leading training sessions at other facilities, developing best practices, building networks of advocates across the healthcare system. The work was hard, sometimes frustrating, often thankless, but it mattered. 1 year after accepting the advocacy position, Claire received an invitation to speak at a national healthcare conference in Chicago. The topic, standing up to authority, protecting patients and staff in high-pressure situations. She almost declined. Public speaking terrified her. But then she thought about Jessica, the young nurse who'd asked how to stand up to pressure. And she thought about all the other Jessicas out there, facing their own battles, needing to know they weren't alone. So she accepted. The conference center in Chicago held 1,500 people. Claire stood backstage, heart hammering, watching the previous speaker finish. Patel had flown out to support her. He appeared beside her now, offering a bottle of water. "You nervous?" he asked. "Completely." "Good. Means you care." "What if I screw it up?" "Then you'll be human, which is the whole point of your talk." The moderator called her name. Claire walked onto the stage, blinking against the lights. The crowd was a dark mass beyond the podium. She gripped the edges of the lectern, took a breath, and began. 2 years ago, I was working a night shift in the ER when a police officer demanded patient records without proper authorization. I said no, and that decision changed my life. For the next 45 minutes, she told the story. Not the sanitized version, not the heroic narrative the media had constructed. The real one. The fear. The doubt. The moment she almost gave up. The night she couldn't sleep. The time she questioned whether following the rules was worth the cost. She talked about the importance of protocol, about documentation, about building support systems so nobody has to fight alone. And she talked about the price, the harassment, the danger, the car chase, the gun. "I'm not here to tell you that doing the right thing is easy," she said, voice steady. "It's not. It's terrifying. It's isolating. And there are real consequences." She paused, scanning the audience. But silence has consequences too. When we stay quiet in the face of abuse, we become complicit. We tell the next person facing that situation that they're alone, that resistance is futile, that power always wins. Her voice strengthened. I was one nurse on one shift making one decision. I didn't think it would matter beyond that moment, but it did. Because every time we choose integrity over convenience, we create space for someone else to do the same. She looked down at her notes, then pushed them aside. You don't have to be brave all the time. You don't have to be perfect. You don't even have to be confident. You just have to be willing to stand in the gap when it matters. To say no when everyone expects you to say yes. To follow the rules even when someone with power tells you to break them. The room was silent. I don't know if what I did was heroic. Most days it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like work. Like doing what I was trained to do. Like being stubborn when maybe being flexible would have been easier. She gripped the podium tighter. But if my story can give one person the courage to speak up, to report abuse, to protect someone who can't protect themselves, then everything I went through was worth it. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause started slowly, then built. People stood. The sound washed over her, overwhelming. Claire walked off stage, legs shaking, and found Patel waiting in the wings. "You did good," he said quietly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. After the conference, opportunities multiplied. Hospitals across the country requested her consultation. Medical schools invited her to speak to future healthcare workers. A publisher approached about writing a book. Claire took some opportunities, declined others. She kept her clinical shifts at Silverline, kept working in the ER 2 days a week, because that was where she'd always belonged. But she also used her growing platform to advocate for stronger protections, better training, systemic accountability. She testified before state legislative committees, provided input on new regulations, helped shape policies that would protect healthcare workers across the region. It wasn't flashy work. Nobody would make movies about committee meetings and regulatory language. But it changed lives. 3 years after the incident with Dunfield, Claire received a call from the Department of Health and Human Services. They wanted her input on new federal guidelines for patient privacy enforcement in emergency settings. She flew to Washington, sat in policy discussions with federal officials, provided real-world perspective that shaped regulations affecting hospitals nationwide. When the new guidelines were published, Claire's name appeared in the acknowledgement section. It was a small thing, but it meant the quiet nurse who'd said no to one cop had influenced federal policy. 5 years after everything started, Claire was supervising a new nurse during an evening shift. His name was Marcus, no relation to Dunfield, just an unfortunate coincidence. And he was 23, fresh out of school, eager to prove himself. They were working the triage desk when a man in an expensive suit approached, looking agitated. "I need to see records for a patient who was treated here this afternoon," he said. Marcus looked uncertain. Do you have—" "I'm the patient's attorney. This is urgent." Claire stepped forward smoothly. "Do you have written authorization from the patient?" The man's expression hardened. "I'm an attorney. I know my rights." "Then you know we can't release protected health information without proper authorization. This is time-sensitive, a legal matter." "Then you should have brought the proper documentation." His face reddened. "I don't think you understand who you're dealing with." Claire met his eyes calmly. "I understand exactly who I'm dealing with, and the answer is still no." The man stared at her, jaw working. Then he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling hospital administration." "You're welcome to do that. In the meantime, we can give you the contact information for our medical records department. They'll walk you through the proper request process." He looked like he wanted to argue further, but something in Claire's expression, calm, immovable, made him think better of it. "This isn't over," he muttered and walked away. Marcus exhaled shakily. "I didn't know what to say. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know when to ask for help." "What if he really does call administration?" "Then they'll back us up because we followed protocol." Marcus nodded slowly. "Is it always this hard?" Claire thought about Dunfield, about Sarah, about Reeves and the parking lot and the gun, about the months of fear and the years of rebuilding. "Sometimes it's harder," she said honestly, "but you learn, and eventually standing up for what's right becomes automatic instead of terrifying." "Did you always know what to do?" "No, but I knew what not to do, and that's usually enough." Later that night, after the shift ended, Claire found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a handwritten note from a patient's family member. "Thank you for protecting my mother's privacy today. The man who tried to get her records was her abusive ex-husband. If you'd given him that information, I don't know what would have happened. You saved her." Claire folded the note carefully and put it in her locker. This was why it mattered, not the headlines or the recognition or the policy changes. This. One person protected, one life potentially saved. 7 years after the confrontation with Dunfield, Claire sat in her office at Silverline Medical Center, reviewing applications for an expanded advocacy program she'd developed. The program would train staff across multiple hospitals in conflict resolution, protocol enforcement, and self-protection. It had taken 3 years to design, 2 years to fund, and would launch next month. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Old habits, but she did. "Hello, is this Claire Whitaker?" A woman's voice, tentative and stressed. "Yes." My name is Rebecca Torres. I'm a nurse in Sacramento. I heard you speak 3 years ago at the Chicago conference. Claire sat up straighter. I remember that conference. You talked about standing up to authority, about not being silent when you see something wrong. I did. Rebecca's voice wavered. Something happened at my hospital. A doctor tried to force me to falsify discharge records to hide a medical error, and I refused, and now they're trying to fire me for insubordination. Claire grabbed a pen. Tell me everything. For the next 90 minutes, she listened, asked questions, took detailed notes, provided guidance on documentation, legal resources, and advocacy organizations. When Rebecca finished, her voice was steadier. What do I do now? Claire walked her through the process step by step. How to preserve evidence, who to contact, what protections she had under whistleblower statutes. You're not alone in this, Claire said. There are people who will help, including me. I'm going to connect you with an attorney who specializes in healthcare whistleblower cases, and I'm going to follow up with you every week until this is resolved. Rebecca's voice cracked. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Because 7 years ago, I was where you are. And I know how isolating it feels, how scared you are, how you're questioning whether you did the right thing. I'm terrified. That's normal, but you did do the right thing, and you're going to get through this. How do you know? Because you're still standing. You made the call. That's the hardest part. After hanging up, Claire sat with the phone in her hand, staring out the window at the city lights. 7 years ago, she had been the one making that desperate call to Captain Vasquez, scared and alone, unsure if doing the right thing would destroy her life. Now she was the one answering those calls. And somehow, that felt like the truest form of justice. Not revenge, not vindication, just being the support she'd needed when she'd had none. 8 years after it all began, Claire was invited to testify before Congress. The Healthcare Worker Protection Act was being debated, federal legislation that would strengthen protections for medical professionals who reported violations, refused to participate in unethical practices, or stood up to authority figures demanding they break protocols. Claire sat at the witness table in a congressional hearing room, facing a panel of senators and representatives. Cameras lined the walls, the gallery was packed. She'd prepared testimony, rehearsed with staffers, reviewed likely questions. But when the committee chairman called on her, she set her notes aside and spoke from the heart. 8 years ago, I was a nurse working a night shift. An officer demanded patient records without authorization. I said no, and that decision led to months of harassment, multiple death threats, and an attempt on my life. The room was silent. I survived because I got lucky, because federal agents intervened, because I had colleagues who supported me. But not everyone gets that lucky. She looked directly at the committee members. Everyday healthcare workers face pressure to cut corners, ignore protocols, or prioritize convenience over patient safety. And when they refuse, they face retaliation, termination, blacklisting, threats. Her voice strengthened. This legislation isn't about protecting troublemakers or encouraging insubordination. It's about ensuring that when someone sees wrongdoing and speaks up, they don't lose their career or their life for doing the right thing. She paused. I was one nurse in one hospital in one city. But my story isn't unique. It's just the one that got attention. For every case like mine that makes headlines, there are hundreds more that don't. Healthcare workers threatened into silence, violations covered up, patients put at risk. She leaned forward. You have an opportunity to change that, to create real protections, to send a message that integrity matters more than institutional convenience. When she finished, the committee chairman thanked her. Several members asked follow-up questions. The hearing continued for another 2 hours. 3 months later, the Healthcare Worker Protection Act passed with bipartisan support, and Claire's testimony was cited in the congressional record as a key factor in building support for the legislation. 10 years after the confrontation with Dunfield, Claire stood in the new wing of Silverline Medical Center. The Claire Whitaker Center for Healthcare Advocacy had taken 5 years to plan and 3 years to build. It housed training facilities, legal resources, counseling services, and a 24/7 hotline for healthcare workers facing ethical dilemmas or retaliation. The dedication ceremony was small. Claire had insisted on it. No politicians, no cameras, just the people who'd been there from the beginning. Angela, Dr. Patel, Captain Vasquez, Rachel Klein, Tom Brennan, and dozens of healthcare workers who'd reached out over the years, people like Rebecca Torres, who'd fought their own battles and won. Claire stood at the podium, looking at the faces gathered before her. 10 years ago, I made a decision that changed my life, she said. I didn't know it would lead here. I didn't know it would matter beyond that one moment. She gestured to the building behind her. But every fight, every threat, every moment of fear, it led to this. A place where healthcare workers can get support, where they can learn to stand up for what's right without standing alone. Her voice caught slightly. I learned something in those dark months when I didn't know if I'd survive. Power doesn't respect silence. It respects boundaries, and boundaries only hold when someone's willing to defend them. She looked at the crowd. Every person here has defended a boundary. Every person here has stood in the gap. And because you did, someone else found the courage to do the same. The applause was warm but brief. These weren't people who needed validation. They were people who knew the cost of doing right. After the ceremony, Claire walked through the center alone. Training rooms equipped with the latest technology, private consultation spaces, a resource library, offices for attorneys and counselors. In the main hallway, a wall displayed photos and brief stories from healthcare workers who'd faced retaliation and survived. Her own photo was there. But so were hundreds of others. Nurses, doctors, technicians, administrators, all of them ordinary people who'd made extraordinary choices. Claire stood there for a long time, reading their stories, feeling the weight of what they'd built together. This was her legacy. Not the headlines or the legislation or the recognition. This, a place where fear didn't have to win. That night, Claire sat on her apartment balcony watching the city lights. Her phone buzzed. Text from a number she didn't recognize. Hi, Miss Whitaker. You don't know me. My name is Jordan. I'm a paramedic in Texas. I just reported my supervisor for covering up equipment failures. They suspended me today. I found your hotline number. I called. And the attorney you connected me with says I have a strong case. I just wanted to say thank you for building something that catches people like me when we fall. Claire typed back. You didn't fall. You stood up. The system pushed you. That's different. Stay strong. We've got your back. The response came quickly. Thank you. That means everything. Claire set her phone down and closed her eyes. 10 years. From one nurse refusing one demand to a nationwide network of advocates. From fear and isolation to community and support. From wondering if she'd survive to helping others do the same. The journey had been brutal, the cost real, the scars permanent. But she'd do it again. Because the alternative, silence, compliance, letting power go unchecked, that cost was higher. She thought about Dunfield, serving the last year of his sentence. About Sarah, still behind bars, facing 8 more years. About Reeves, dead in a parking lot, his corruption network dismantled. She didn't feel triumph, just quiet satisfaction that accountability had won, and a deep, bone-tired gratitude that she'd survived to see it. 15 years after it all began, Claire sat in a television studio in New York. A major network was producing a documentary about healthcare advocacy, and they'd asked her to participate. She'd initially declined, but when they explained the reach, potentially millions of viewers, she reconsidered. If her story could inspire even one person to speak up, it was worth the discomfort. The interviewer was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and sharp questions. Looking back, would you do anything differently? Claire considered. I'd document more from the beginning. I'd reach out for support sooner. I'd be less afraid to ask for help. But you'd still say no? Absolutely. Even knowing what it would cost you? The cost of saying yes would have been higher. How so? Claire met the camera directly. If I'd given in, I'd have proven that intimidation works, that power trumps principle. And the next person facing that situation would have been even more alone than I was. So you see yourself as having paved the way. No, I see myself as one person in a long line of people who refuse to be silent. I wasn't the first. I won't be the last. But you've become a symbol. I'm not a symbol. I'm a nurse who followed the rules and paid the price. The symbol is what we've built since then, the networks, the protections, the proof that integrity doesn't have to be a death sentence. The interview continued for another hour. When it aired 3 months later, Claire watched it alone in her apartment. She barely recognized herself. The woman on screen was confident, articulate, certain. But Claire remembered the terrified nurse in the ER parking lot, hands shaking, wondering if she'd survive the night. Both versions were true. You could be scared and strong at the same time. 20 years after the confrontation with Dunfield, Claire retired from clinical nursing. She'd spent the last decade splitting her time between advocacy work and patient care, but her body was telling her it was time to choose. Her last shift at Silverline Medical Center was quiet by design. She'd requested no party, no ceremony, just work. But Angela had other plans. At midnight, the ER staff gathered. Someone had made a cake. Dr. Patel, now head of emergency medicine, gave a brief speech. 27 years ago, Claire Whitaker walked into this ER as a new nurse, and in that time, she's saved countless lives. Not just with medical care, but with something harder: courage, integrity, the stubborn refusal to let wrong go unchallenged. He raised a coffee cup. To Claire, who taught us that sometimes the most important medicine we provide isn't in a syringe or a pill, it's in standing up. They toasted, they ate cake, they told stories. And at 2 a.m., Claire walked out of Silverline Medical Center for the last time as a nurse. But not for the last time. The advocacy center still needed her. The hotline still needed her. The people fighting their own battles still needed her. She was just shifting how she showed up. 25 years after it all began, Claire received a letter. It was handwritten, forwarded through the advocacy center. The return address was a federal prison in California. She almost threw it away. But curiosity won. The handwriting was careful, measured. Dear Miss Whitaker, you don't know me, but you probably know my name. I'm Marcus Dunfield. I was released from prison 3 years ago after serving my full sentence. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to make amends. I don't know if this counts, but I'm going to try. What I did to you was wrong. The intimidation, the entitlement, the belief that my badge gave me the right to ignore your expertise and your humanity. I was wrong. I've spent the last 20 years thinking about that night, about the choices I made, about the cascade of consequences that followed. I lost my career, my marriage, my freedom, and I deserved to lose all of it. But you lost things too. Your sense of safety, your peace of mind, years of your life spent looking over your shoulder. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but it's true. I work construction now. I'm sober. I volunteer at a reentry program for former officers. I'm trying to be better than the person I was. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that what you did, standing up to me, it changed more than just my circumstances. It changed who I am. I hope you're well. Marcus Dunfield. Claire read the letter 3 times. She thought about responding, thought about what she'd say. In the end, she filed it in a folder with other documents from that period of her life. Maybe someday she'd respond. Maybe not. Forgiveness was a process, not a switch, and she didn't owe him anything. 30 years after the confrontation that changed everything, Claire sat in her apartment reviewing applications for the annual Healthcare Advocacy Fellowship. The fellowship had grown into a prestigious program, 50 slots annually, full funding, intensive training in conflict resolution, legal protections, and systemic advocacy. Alumni of the program were working in hospitals across the country. Some had started their own advocacy centers. Others had gone into policy work. The ripple continued. Claire was 73 now. Her hair was silver. Her hands occasionally shook. But her mind was sharp, and her commitment hadn't wavered. Her phone rang. A video call from Jessica, the young nurse who'd asked for advice all those years ago. Jessica was 55 now, running an advocacy program at a major hospital in Seattle. Hey, Jessica said, smiling. Just wanted to check in. How's the program going? Amazing. We just had our 100th case this year, all resolved without retaliation. Claire felt warmth spread through her chest. That's incredible. It's because of what you built, what you taught me. You did the work. You showed me it was possible. They talked for 30 minutes about cases, about challenges, about the ongoing fight to protect people who chose integrity over convenience. When they hung up, Claire sat in the silence, feeling the weight of 3 decades. She thought about this terrified nurse in the ER, facing down a cop, unsure if she'd survived the decision. She thought about the years of fear and fighting. She thought about the advocacy center, the legislation, the thousands of people who'd reached out for help. And she thought about the simple truth that had sustained her through it all. Power doesn't respect silence. It respects boundaries. And boundaries only hold when someone's willing to defend them. She'd been that someone, and she'd taught countless others to be that someone too. That was enough. More than enough. Claire stood, made herself tea, and returned to the fellowship applications. Tomorrow, she'd select the next cohort of advocates. Tomorrow, she'd continue the work. Tomorrow, someone else would face their own Dunfield, some authority figure demanding they compromise their principles. And because Claire had stood her ground 30 years ago, that person wouldn't be alone. They'd have protocols, resources, support systems, legal protections. They'd have proof that standing up was possible, that integrity could survive, that fear didn't have to win. And that would be Claire's legacy. Not the headlines or the honors or the buildings with her name on them, but the quiet knowledge that somewhere, right now, someone was choosing courage over compliance and surviving because she'd shown them how.